It's December 5th, 2023, 10:50 a.m. My name is Kessie Ian Anderson, and welcome back for another edition of Heresiarch.
Before I was even born, my father was in the Congress of the United States, Thomas D'Alessandro Jr. He was okay, let's hear it for Dad. He was, as a little boy, little teenager, a Shabbat Goy. So he spoke Yiddish. So as he grew up in that, and he was an orator, he was a great speaker and all the rest, and he had a love for the idea of a Jewish state in what was then called Palestine. So when he was older and he went to Congress, this was one of his big issues. He worshipped at the shrine of Franklin Roosevelt. He was a New Deal Democrat. He worshipped at the shrine of Franklin Roosevelt, but he disagreed with him on two very strong points. One was on the treatment of Jewish people in Europe that he wanted to call more attention to. And two, the second was the establishment of a Jewish state in what was then known as Palestine.
In this edition, I'm reading a conference paper, January 2020, by a gentleman named Yaakov D. Cohen, Noahide Law Sources, Noahide Laws Sources. And he does a Q&A in this paper where he answers the questions and where this information comes from. So I'm going to read it and I'm going to jump in and break it down as I see fit, because all of this information is loaded to get you to become a Noahide. So in advance, to understand, a Noahide is the Jewish version of a dhimmi in Islam. So you either have to become a dhimmi, D-H-I-M-M-I, in Islam, or you have to become a Noahide in Judaism, because they are monotheistic religions. They are setting people's minds up for the oneness narrative. Because if you have anything away, if your eye is not single to God's glory, you are a heretic. And that's why I chose the name for my channel, Heresiarch. It is an originator or chief advocate of a heresy. It's based on the Greek heretikos, which means able to choose. These people do not want you to have a choice. They don't want you to have options. They are the ones that decide what oneness actually is. So let's dive in. Question A. Where does the Bible say that these 7 Noahide commandments were given to Noah? And where does it say that they were given to Adam? Answer. The first 6 commandments were given to Adam. These commandments were repeated, and a 7th commandment was added when God made the covenant of the rainbow with Noah. Hence, these became known as the 7 Noahide commandments. Everything in this is loaded. Covenant of the rainbow. Who currently has the rainbow? LGBTQRSTUV. They are going to take that back. And the LGBT community is done. They're going to be wrecked when this happens. And they're going to do it. They make the pendulum swing to the left in the extremes. So you have to understand, in Judaism, they control all sides. So you have your people on the left pushing and amplifying their left narrative as hard as possible socially. Then you have people on the right pushing their right agenda as far possible. And they're trying to get the pendulum swinging as much as possible in both directions, so that when people finally snap, they will be able to come and bring it to the middle. Problem, reaction, solution. It's Hegelian dialectic. Everything is a Hegelian dialectic in this world. And I'm saying everything, including the Bible. Hence, these became known as the 7 Noahide commandments. As an introduction, before going on to point out the source verses, note that the covenant of the rainbow was not dependent on these commandments. So now they've already given themselves an out. Rather, it was God's promise to all living creatures that he would never again obliterate all land life from the world, no matter how sinful people would become. Genesis 9, 8 through 17. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. The covenant of the rainbow has an inner meaning as well, which is that God promised that he would always accept a person's sincere personal repentance if it was directed to him. So you have to understand that the basis of the Noahide law idea is Adam to Noah, they had fallen into such a sinful state that God did a great reset, hint, hint. So God did a great reset to the people. And then they base the laws that God gave to Adam as the reasoning why Noah was able to have laws, these 7 Noahide laws, because he was able to pick from what was commanded to Adam. And that's what the rabbis do. They go through all of Genesis and find these verses. In English, I think it's a strain. It seems like they're wresting the scriptures, W-R-E-S-T-I-N-G-ing, wresting the scriptures. But in their world, that's all they do. That's all the Talmud is. It is just pilpul, P-I-L-P-O-L, which means peppering, which means their version of massaging the truth. If they can justify it, if they can find an out, a loophole, they will. And that's what this is. That's what wresting doctrine is. It's when you take a verse and you twist it and you make stuff up that isn't there and change it so that it can be what you think it should mean. And these guys are masters at that. They're also masters of inferring what's not there. So in legal law, let's say you are in court and you see a cow. The court says, okay, half of the cow was turned towards you. What did it look like? Oh, it had spots, black and white. And then they say, okay, what was on the other side of it? Well, that's not admissible because it could be zigzag stripes on the other side of the cow, even though that doesn't make sense. But it's not admissible in court if you are not an absolute 100% witness to what is on the other side of that cow and the way it was. Is take a zebra. You see one side is striped zebra. That's the only side that's permissible. But these people will take and imply things. For example, Seth, when Adam was repenting for 130 years and he gave birth to Seth, well, he didn't, but when Eve gave birth to Seth, they said Seth was in Adam's image and likeness. They go and then imply that there had to have been others that weren't in his image likeness. That's what this is saying. Even though it doesn't say that, that's what they imply. So these people who do that want to be the ones controlling all the AIs. They want to control all the singularity information. They want to control all of us because I don't know why, but control freaks that's what they are. Ultimate in selfishness is Judaic doctrine. Christianity is very selfish in a lot of ways. But once you break through that mold, at least Christianity, it's only voluntary power. They don't have legal power. Problem with this group, the Noahide Laws, Chabad Lubavitch, Benjamin Netanyahu, Jared Kushner, Trump, all these who are part of Chabad. Trump is part of Chabad.
Donald Trump converted to Judaism 2 years ago, according to White House official. There it is. That's his blog. He said, President Donald Trump converted to Judaism 2 years ago and joined Chabad Lubavitch synagogue in New York City, according to a high-level White House official. Mr. Goldberg says the story has allegedly been held by CNN's editors for months, but is due to be released within the next few days. David Elias Goldberg, a fellow at the Jewish Center of Anti-Semitic Study, has also interviewed the White House source. According to the source, Trump was pushed by his daughter Ivanka and son-in-law Jared Kushner to join the faith. At first, Trump resisted, stating it would threaten his base of evangelical Christian voters. However, he had a change of heart and officially converted in early 2017. The ceremony was held in private and closely guarded for nearly 2 years. It appears the White House is prepared to slowly release this information, and by summer, it is expected Trump will fully address his new faith in an evening televised news conference. He is clearly the most pro-Israel president in the history of America. He's given Israel every single thing that they've wanted, and he's about to give them war with Iran.
You okay?
And so has he converted? So I want to show you one more article This is, let me see if I can.
This is the Times of Israel.
Yeah, the Times of Israel. This was published March 22nd, 2019. This is the Times of Israel. Trump, the first Jewish president of the United States.
Now, that's not us saying that. That's Times of Israel. Times of what nation? Israel.
So the people in Israel, that's an English-speaking newspaper in Israel, and that's what they read, that Donald Trump is the first Jewish president of the United States.
And how did they qualify that, Rick?
They gave a list of things that he did for Israel.
First of one, of course, moving the embassy to Jerusalem.
That's right.
That was a big deal.
Then recognizing Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. He's the first sitting U.S. president to visit the Western Wall. They gave him credit for defeating ISIS. They gave him credit for rebuking the United Nations when the UN criticized Israel. They credit him with closing the Palestinian office in Washington, D.C. And they said these things, what is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, these 6 things qualify Donald Trump to be named the first Jewish president of the United States.
That's what the Times of Israel said.
Again, that was not David Duke's newsletter.
Right.
It's a Jewish-owned newspaper. And they're proclaiming Donald Trump to be the first Jewish president of the United States. So now when you look at this David Elias Goldberg saying that a White House insider told him that President Trump converted to Judaism 2 years ago.
Suddenly it doesn't sound so crazy, does it?
Now it's not too crazy. And that CNN knows about it, and CNN is sitting on the story and will be releasing it at some point.
It was history's darkest hour. Millions of innocent, wonderful, and beautiful lives, men, women, and children, were extinguished as part of a systematic attempt to eliminate the Jewish people. It was the most savage crime against God and his children.
We were so deeply moved to see that picture of you touching the stones of the wall. And may I say, we were deeply moved to see First Lady Melania Trump touching the stone on that wall. And equally moved when we saw your daughter Ivanka and your son-in-law Jared do the same.
Okay, so let's just, what if it's true? What if it's true? What does that say to you, Doc?
That says to me there's been such a major shift in values in America. It's no longer Judeo-Christian values anymore. It's Judeo values now. It's Judeo values now. Yes. It's Judeo values now. It's Judeo values now.
Yes.
It's Judeo values now. It's Judeo values now. Judeo values. Judeo values. Judeo values. Judeo values. Judeo values. Judeo values. Judeo values now.
Yes.
Let's look at Argentina. Milou. That guy, as soon as he signed up, he came public and he goes, I am now converted to Judaism. I know Trump has converted to Judaism. He is an absolute Trojan horse. He was a peace guy for the first 4 years, his next 4. We are going to get into the biggest, massive World War III ever to kill, and I'm going to say it outright, they want white dudes dead. And Trump will be that Cyrus. Trump will be the one who leads the Gentiles to their death. And it's also in Kabbalah stuff. So Christopher John Bjorkness is a guy you need to follow when it comes to that. He breaks that down very well. I disagree with him on some things, but his overall viewpoint and the way they point it is unmatched so far when it comes to Kabbalah and Judaism. So let's jump back in. The entire book of Genesis and the book of Exodus, up to and including the arrival of the Israelites at Mount Sinai, were dictated by God to Moses when they arrived there. There was then a first covenant made between God and the Israelites, who at that point were still Noahides. On that part of the Torah, before the 10 Commandments were spoken openly to all of them by God. The part of Torah which God decreed that Gentiles must observe is the 7 Noahide commandments, which in essence are all prohibitions, including all their details. God told Moses at Mount Sinai that the Gentiles, all that come into the world, would be expected to at least keep those 7 commandments from that point on. Couple things. First tablets that Moses brought down from Mount Sinai, those were the 7 Noahide laws according to them. There is a verse that you can read that actually says that the first tablets were exactly the same as the second. And that's in the Old Testament as well, in, I think it's Deuteronomy, if I remember right. Or maybe it was Exodus. But either way, those first set, Chabad Lubavitch says those were the 7 Noahide laws. Noah gathered the animals. Your soul, like I stated in my last video about the Noahide laws revisited, your soul comes from Tohu, which is chaos, which is before the world was created, 973 generations before Adam, or excuse me, 974 generations before Adam was pre-Adam man. His soul came on the scene when Adam was created and Adam was repenting in the garden, and he ejaculated because he was not allowed to touch Eve, and those became the demon souls of us. So when you hear the term Gentile, when you hear the term nation, replace that with the term goyim. Goyim is the physical form. Those are the animals in human form that came from the 974 generations pre-Adam. Erev Rav is the soul that inhabited those bodies. So the soul was 26 generations, but the body was 974 generations. Also, that leads into why we are taught the theory of evolution and why they've duped all the atheists into accepting it, because that is accepting the Noahide laws and Judaism in general. Up to that time, the general Gentile population of the world had forsaken any obligations they had been commanded through Adam or Noah. So according to his plan, God released everyone from the reward associated with fulfilling those earlier obligations, since the nations had rejected them, which he all along intended to be renewed through his greatest prophet of all time, Moses. And again, this might be offensive to Christians, but Moses is the ultimate weak link. Moses is, in my world, straight evil. Straight, pure evil. He introduced blood sacrifice. He introduced Marduk worship. Yahweh is not what you've been told. There's a lot of doctrine, a lot of sources that talks about Yahweh being an actual demon, a desert demon. And Moses only gave Christianity 178 pages of information, whereas he gave his elites 6,200 plus pages found in the Talmud. Not direct, because it's oral information. They passed it down from person to person, from generation to generation. And then the rabbis, the sages, sages, nice. They took that information and crammed it into the Talmud. So Moses, I'm saying, set the trap for everybody. Since the whole future existence of creation was dependent on the acceptance of the Torah of Moses and its 613 Jewish commandments by the Israelites at Mount Sinai, God's covenant for the reward of eternal life was made on the Torah at that time as a heritage for the Jews and for Gentiles who wish to accept their part in this Mosaic covenant. Okay, so you get a part in this Mosaic covenant. A regular Christian would read that and be like, well, that sounds like good. No, you don't get much at all. You get a scrap off of their table. This is for Jew to Jew. This is not for you. The Noahide laws are for you to fulfill. And then they spin it and they say, oh, well, we have to follow 613 commandments. You only have to follow 7. Oh, it's so easy to follow these 7. Just deny your God and Jesus, and there you go. Otherwise, we will use your digital trail. We will have your judgment in our Noahide court, and we do not even have to have a witness for capital punishment. You don't just one accusation and we can execute you. Isn't that great? But we're just animals. We're just slaves to these people. God's covenant for the reward of eternal life was made on the Torah at that time as a heritage for the Jews. So it's a heritage for the Jews. Their soul, they believe, comes from Adam. Your soul does not. And for Gentiles, Goyim, who wish to accept their part in this Mosaic covenant. The revealed Torah is God's tree of eternal life, and from that time on, Gentiles can obtain a share in the future world to come, the culmination of the Messianic era, if they choose to observe their 7 commandments as their part in the written and oral Torah which God gave through Moses. Written Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Oral Torah, 6,200 plus page Babylonian Talmud. And even then, there's 2 Talmuds, the Jerusalem Talmud and the Babylonian Talmud. The reason why they default to the Babylonian at all times is because Jerusalem Talmud may have had a shred of Roman influence. So they have to go to the most degenerate, which is the Babylonian. God also made this understandable by simple human logic. Since we only know about the 7 Noahide commandments and all their details through God's Torah, a Noahide's reward for acceptance and fulfillment of them as divine commandments must be accompanied by faith in the Torah. But if a person lacks this faith, God forbid, that does not change his or her accountability for transgression of any of the 7 Noahide laws. So, right there, ignorance is no excuse of the law. So if you're not even aware of these, it does not matter. 1991 House Joint Resolution 104, they passed the Noahide Laws into our legal code. All of our governors signed proclamations for the Noahide Laws. Every state has done it. Especially in 2018, I looked up every one of them. I haven't done it since, but I know they keep doing it. So in the Talmud, Oral Torah, Tractate Sanhedrin, chapter 7, it is explained that all of these 7 Noahide commandments are coded within a single verse in Genesis, chapter 2. But first, let's start with 6 of the Noahide commandments, which are explicitly found in different verses in the book of Genesis. So here we go. He tries to use their pill pull to use the Old Testament to justify how these existed and why the rabbis think this is the way the Noahide laws came about. Do not murder. The edict against murder is stated in Genesis 9:6. Whoever sheds the blood of man among man, his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God he made man. Now you have to understand, they have a separate rulings for Jew to Jew versus Jew to Gentile, Gentile to Gentile, and Gentile to Jew. Because we, children of Amalek, the Erev Rav, we are not part of Judaism. Noahide Law 2, do not have forbidden sexual relations. 5 of the 6 types of relations which are forbidden by God to Gentiles are covered in Genesis 2:24. Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and cling to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. This verse explicitly forbids relations with one's mother, one's father's wife, a wife of another man, another male, and an animal. A Gentile is also forbidden to have relations with his maternal sister, which is learned from Genesis 20:13. Moreover, she is indeed my sister, my father's daughter, though not my mother's daughter, and she became my wife. Note that Abraham said this to appease Abimelech. It was actually only figuratively true in his case, since Sarah was the daughter of Abraham's brother. So they had the same paternal grandfather, who people often referred to as father. Now, I don't know how true that is, people referring to the grandfather as father. To me, that sounds like excuses. The whole story of Abraham and Abimelech, I hate it, all of it. I highly dislike Abraham. And for you who are Christians, you might be upset about that. But the idea that I have to accept that God spoke to this dude just because he said he did, and then Lord said to Abraham, really? How? What way? Did he appear? Was he a human? Was he a spirit? Was it EMF? Was it voice to God technology? How? What? There's no answer to that. And I'm not saying this to be sarcastic or hyperbolic or ironic. No. For great claims requires great evidence. And we have nothing about Abraham. Nothing other than, well, we have to accept him. Some dude hearing voices and was going to kill his own kid. Sacrifice. Insane for anybody to accept Abraham. All Abrahamic things that come from that dude, no way. I'm out. So the way that they read these verses and the way they interpret them, that's what you're dealing with the Judaic mind. It's not the same as ours. It is not. So not only do I do agree that there is a group of people from Adam, and I do agree that there's a group of people pre-Adam, but the roles have been flipped. They are reversed. That's what I'm saying. So that's my speculation. Maybe I'm just saying it to cope and make myself feel better, but I will stand by it. It also was universally accepted that father-daughter relations would be included, as evidenced by the disgrace of Lot after he had relations with his 2 daughters, following God's destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Genesis 19:29-36, and Rashi's explanation of Genesis 21. Rashi, you need to know, is another one of their little insider names for their little favorite Jew rabbis in the past. Relations of a female with a female are likewise an abomination to God, which is included as one of the subjects of the verse Leviticus 18:3, which speaks against the immoral practices of the ancient Egyptians and Canaanites, and which Leviticus 18:30 refers to as abominable traditions. About these, the Midrash Sifra specifies, a man would marry a man, a woman would marry a woman, and a woman would be married to 2 men. Oh, but it's okay for Abraham to have 4 wives. That's okay, guys. So the excuse making they make, now I'm not necessarily defending the LGBT, it's not my business to care. And if they stayed in their lane and did what they choose to do and just kept it to themselves, I would not care. But the problem is for some reason, Judaism wants to amplify, again, the Hegelian dialectic, amplify and push all of that into our face so that we're stuck doing it. And then they use their excuse, well, everybody who was straight, cisgendered, was pushing it into our face this whole time that we had to exist. Well, if the goal is to continue, and I will argue, here's another Hegelian dialectic. Don't have kids, overpopulation, oh no, we're using up natural resources. And so what do we, the slave class, the compliant, empathetic Amalekites, whitey especially, how stupid we are. We are the dumbest. White people are so stupid to be as weak as we are choosing to be. So we listen to these freaks. We listen to these clowns. We choose to not have a family. And then what do they say? Oh no, your population, your birth rates are so low. We're going to have to bring in economic refugees. Wait, I thought overpopulation was a big deal. Oh, but it's hitting you in the pocketbook. Or your CEOs have found a way to save money on labor because you're going to bring in people that don't understand their worth, that don't understand the laws, that don't understand their rights, so they can be used and abused and spit out and taken advantage of. And then you're going to blame it on white man. And then you're going to use your Israeli NGOs to bring them in and then blame it on white men. So was the Holocaust a white genocide? Is that what it was? Is that what the Holocaust was, guys? Oh, it's not. Oh, it was a Jewish genocide. So what are they? Whose team are they? What are they? Are they white? Apparently they're not. And they admit they're not until it doesn't suit their purpose. 3, do not commit theft. The prohibition of theft is contained within the permission which God granted to Adam and Eve in Genesis 2:16 to eat from the trees of the garden. This implies that if the permission had not been granted, they would have been forbidden to do so, because the property did not belong to them. This applied specifically to the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which was forbidden for them to take under penalty of death. And that's why I call it the tree of life and the tree of death. Genesis 2:17. Note that Adam and Eve were not given permission to eat animals. So all humans were constrained to be vegetarians until after the flood. God permitted the eating of meat for the first time to Noah and his family after they left the ark, which is why God at that time added the 7th commandment, which prohibits the eating of flesh removed from a living animal. So the Noahide Laws, the 7th law added was the do not eat flesh from a living animal. So just what were these people willing to do to the slave class before is my question. Number 4, this is the most dangerous Noahide law of all time. This is it. This is our death. This is where we are beheaded in a court.
Last night I dreamt about how things were.
Of every enemy of the state!
And then I woke up here.
Sounds hyperbolic, sounds ridiculous, but they are amping up FEMA. They're going to keep hitting us with biosensors. They're going to keep doing things to track, target, and ID us and know everything that we do so that we are brought in for a Noahide law. So when Trump comes out and he pushes law and order, law and order, law and order, it is a Hegelian dialectic to use on us. Because they're going to push law and order. You're going to obey the law, right? We wrote some words on a piece of paper. You're going to follow what they say, right? Because for some reason, you as slaves, you read it in a book. You think that's the way it has to be, right? You're not going to have your own inherent worth and choose your own worth because you're going to let us dictate your worth. And so that's my whole point of everything. When you are a human, when you are a child of God and you know your own worth, you don't have to look to others to give you worth. Make your own worth. Say you are invaluable and live it. Live the way you are or the way you want to be. They say fake it till you make it. Just make it. Just be it. You don't have to get any permission from somebody else. You don't have to listen to the peanut gallery for your self-esteem. Just be who you are. Be that child of God. Be God's family. Be a God. But not these guys'. This whole Bible thing is a mess. It's a hot mess. So establish laws and courts of justice. This can be learned from the story of Shechem, Dinah, and the sons of Jacob. In Genesis 34:2, it relates, Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her. He took her, and he lay with her, and violated her. His taking her against her will was a form of kidnapping, which was forbidden as a type of theft. Now, look at this. Taking her against her will was a form of kidnapping. That's all they cry about is the kidnapping part. They don't care that she was raped because they're just animals. It was the taking of somebody else's property. So the rape, they don't care about really, at the end of the day, sexual sins. They don't care, especially in the Talmud when it talks about having sex with kids 3 years old and under 9. And how it's nothing. Pedophilia is condoned in the Talmud. These dudes look at us as the slave class as just their entertainment. I do have some cats. I never was an animal person, but I currently have 4 cats. And I go out of my way for those kitties. I take care of them so well. They are the most spoiled things of all time. I do. I love these little cats, surprisingly enough. And the way I look at them, the way they look at them, no, I'm out. I don't even really look at them as sub-entities to me. I just look at them as, these are cats, they live their lives. I just like to make their lives at ease. They bring me quite a bit of joy. I have fun with these cats. But I wouldn't ever look at them as a slave. I would never look at them as sub-me. I would never look at them as something that I can abuse and treat like dirt and crash stock markets that they kill themselves, cause wars that they can go in and fight. No, that's insanity. All because they want to control the board and their oneness. They want to break us down and put us back together in their artificial intelligence golem, 1984, room 101. Insanity, schizophrenic psyches. So, his taking her against her will was a form of kidnapping, which was forbidden as a type of theft. Since the men of Shechem City did not convene a court of justice and convict him for his crimes, they failed to obey this commandment, and also collectively became accomplices to his crime. Jacob's sons therefore formed a court, convicted them, and executed them. So the Noahide laws don't just have individual implications, group implications. So when the media comes out and runs their lies about systemic racism, they are broad brushing an entire group. Look at what's going on in Gaza. They have said that all Gazans are complicit for what Hamas did. So Israel set up Hamas to be their puppet. They acted on it, and now they're blaming the innocents for what their puppet did, and that's what they're going to do to all of us with these Noahide laws. So the courts of justice gets very sketchy, and I believe he might go further into it, I hope, in this one. If not, I'll have to jump into another PDF information that I read. Don't eat flesh taken from a live animal. This commandment, the seventh, was given to Noah in Genesis 9:4. Nevertheless, you may not eat flesh with its life, which is its blood. So they take that to mean that you can't eat it while it's alive. That's why they got kosher, why they have to salt the animal and drain it of all blood before they can eat it. And a lot of people say it's due to hygiene, it's due to that. Well, I'd say it's cannibalism. It's due to what they do in behind the scenes. There are cannibals. They sacrifice humans. It's a fact. There's blood libel running around. They just don't want us to know about it. Look at porphyria and how much that ravages the Ashkenazis. Read porphyria. Read about that. Look up that disease and research a ton about it. You will believe in vampires after that. Oh my gosh, you're such a hate. No, I absolutely, out of Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, you have Judaism light, which is Islam for the slave class, and then you have Christianity. The most respect I have is for Christianity, but Christianity is for dupes. You got to escape that matrix. You got to get out of there. All these people talking rapture, hoping for the best. Good luck. Good luck. I've had so many people throw dates at me. The rapture's happening this date. It's coming. We know it is. The Bible says this. I'm sorry. It happens when they say it happens, and it's not going to be what you think. None of it is going to happen how you think is what I'm saying. They have set this up to be the biggest scam and to biggest lie. I go to the Dark Knight.
Dad, is he okay?
Thank you.
You don't have to thank me.
Yes, I do. The Joker won. Harvey's prosecution, everything you fought for. Undone. Whatever chance you gave us of fixing our city dies with Harvey's reputation. We bet it all on him. The Joker took the best of us and tore him down. People will lose hope.
They won't. They must never know what he did.
5 dead. 2 of them cops. You can't speak that.
But the Joker cannot win. Gotham needs its true hero. You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. I can do those things, because I'm not a hero. Not like Dad. I killed those people. That's what I can be.
No, you can't. You're not.
I'm whatever Gotham needs me to be. Call it in.
A hero. Not the hero we deserved, but the hero we needed. Nothing less than a knight. Shining.
They'll hunt you.
You'll hunt me. You'll condemn me. Set the dogs on me. Because that's what needs to happen. Because sometimes truth isn't good enough. Sometimes people deserve more. Sometimes people deserve to have their faith rewarded.
Batman! Batman! Why is he running, Dad?
Because we have to chase him.
Okay, we're going in. Go, go!
He didn't do anything wrong.
Because he's the hero Gotham deserves. But not the one it needs right now. So we'll hunt him. Because he can take it. Because he's not a hero. He's a silent guardian. A watchful protector. A dark knight.
At the very end, and the hope that Batman talks about, that is what they're setting up for us. Do not commit blasphemy. Leviticus 24:10-17 relates the incident of a Jew who violated the injunction of Exodus 22:27 and blasphemed in anger, and the divine edict proclaiming this to be a capital offense. Moreover, it states there, ish, any man who curses his God shall bear his sin. Why the double expression of ish? Literally, a man, to include all mankind, Jews and Gentiles. This demonstrates that blasphemy thus is prohibited to Gentiles as a capital offense, even as it is for Jews. Sanhedrin 56a. Now you have to understand, what does that mean to blaspheme God? If you are a Christian, you believe in God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. By accepting those three, you are cutting God's oneness into three. Even though your pastor said, well, there's still one. Blah. Even though your pastor says that there's still one, your Noahide Law judgment, you are dead. They will behead you because you are blaspheming God's oneness. And the rabbis have pill-pulled and Pharisee and Sadduceed and made up their weird terms that every Noahide law is punishable by death if you break them. So therefore, you do not survive these. None of us survive these. None of us. So take that control freak family member that you can never appease, ramp that up to 1 million on steroids that you have to live according to them and walk on their eggshells. That's what these are. That's what these Noahide laws are. They've been pushing sin, porn, everything onto us the entire time because they want us pre-guilty for our judgment to prove to us why we deserve to be beheaded according to their rules. Oh, that'll never happen. That'll never happen. Yeah, well, I never thought New Zealand would have a 25% death rate from an injection. And yet here we are. Do not murder. The edict against murder is stated in Genesis 9:6. Whoever sheds the blood of man among man, his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God he made man. Now you have to understand, this is for Jews, because they're the ones that came from God. In the Talmud, they can murder a goy, a Gentile, and it doesn't, as long as it's Jew versus Gentile, well, we're just animals, we're just slaves, we're just the cats that they hate. The source for the remaining law, which prohibits worship of false gods, is explained below. So this is such a big deal, he makes a big old 4-page thing about it. So here we go. The source for the remaining law which prohibits worship of false gods is explained below. But first note that the recounting and recording of the 7 Noahide laws by Moses took place at Mount Sinai, 2 days before God spoke the 10 utterances in Exodus 21 through 14. In Exodus 23, it says, Moses came before God spoke the 10 utterances and told the people all the words of God and all the laws. The words all the laws refer to the 7 Noahide laws and 3 additional Jewish laws which the children of Israel had already been commanded before they arrived at Mount Sinai. Moses told this total of 10 laws to the Israelites at Marah after they crossed through the sea. See Exodus 15:25. The next verse, Exodus 24:4, states that Moses wrote all the words of God. These words were the book of Genesis, which contains the Noahide covenant and the Noahide laws, and the book of Exodus up to that point. God thus commanded the Jewish people at that time to remember the Noahide laws, to teach them to all the nations of the world for all generations, and to provide for the establishment of Noahide courts in the land of Israel for those Gentiles who choose to live there. In the oral Torah passed down through the Jewish prophets and sages and recorded in the Talmud, Sanhedrin, page 56b, it is explained that all these 7 laws given are coded within the verse of Genesis 2:16. And Lord commanded to the man, saying, of every tree of the garden you may surely eat. Now you'd read that and be like, what? How? That makes no sense. But here they go with their pilpul in Hebrew. In Hebrew, the verse reads, Vaitzav chavai Elohim al chadom lemor mikol eitz hagen achol tochel. One of the 13 specific rules of authentic Torah exegesis is by a tradition of an analogy between 2 laws established on the basis of identical Hebrew expressions. The 7 laws are coded into Genesis 2:16. As follows, as explained by the Talmudic sage Rabbi Yochanan. I'm doing that from here on out. The word Elohim is one of the holy divine names which mean God. But is it? Elohim actually translates to guardian. Those Elohim that they met, Elohim is plural. Anytime you have an im in Hebrew, it's plural. I'm saying that whatever this Elohim character is, everybody says it's God. It is not. There is something else at play and at work. The word Elohim is one of the holy divine names which mean God, but the same word is used in the non-holy plural sense to refer to physical or conceptual idolatries, other gods, as in the verse, you shall have no other gods, Exodus 23. Thus, the above statement to Adam implies that only God should be worshipped, but not an idol. According to this, a Gentile is liable for making an idol, even without worshipping it. Note, the Talmudic sage Rabbi Yitzhak offered an alternative derivation. He suggests that the word tzav, command, in the verse points to a prohibition of worship of false idols. The verse would then teach that only God, the one true God, is the source of all true commandments, and therefore only God is to be served. The connection to idolatry is evident from Hosea 5:11. Ephraim is plundered, shattered by his judgment, for he has willingly followed after their command, tzav, i.e. the command of idolatrous priests. 2. The unspoken 4-letter divine name in this verse, transposed to spoken form as Havaya, points to a prohibition against cursing God, as evident from Leviticus 24:16. And one who pronounces blasphemously the name of the Lord Havaya shall be put to death. The entire assembly shall surely stone him, convert and native alike. When he blasphemes the name, he shall be put to death. Note, in the painless mode of execution, translated from Hebrew as stoning, the convicted criminal was drugged and thrown to his death from a high tower onto a stone pavement. Oh, that makes it okay. It's painless, guys. He was just thrown from the top. And look at that. Where have we seen drugged and thrown to his death from a high tower onto a stone pavement? Guess what, people? ISIS, Israeli Secret Intelligence Service, these Mossad pieces of garbage.
How these different organizations are spelled and explain them each, because you have 3 major intelligence gathering organizations in Israel. You start with the Mossad. What is it?
Mossad means institute, by the way, and this is an institute for intelligence and special operations. So the Mossad is the foreign espionage arm. Compare it to the CIA.
All right, go down here to the...
Next one is Aman, right? Military intelligence. It's a Hebrew acronym, so it is the intelligence arm of the armed forces. As Yossi was saying, it in fact is the largest and most important. And then it says Shin Bet, 2 Hebrew letters, initials for security services. That's the domestic agency, the equivalent of the FBI.
Which one of the 3 is the most important?
Oh, it would be Aman, the military intelligence. Nothing is more important than you're watching your Arab neighbors for actual movements of troops, how many tanks they have, where are the aircraft. All these other missions that we described are fascinating. And even getting, thousands of Jews into the country is vital. But war, having a sign that war is coming, that's the key, and that's Aman's job.
Which is the second most important?
The Mossad. The problem with Aman, with the military intelligence, is that it lives in the shadow of the flamboyant Mossad. It can be compared to the same problem which is facing United States National Security Agency, NSA. It is the largest, the most important agency in the intelligence community. Yet, the most famous one, which gets media attention, is the CIA. The same is in Israel. The Mossad has become sort of epitomizing the Israeli intelligence. But the most important agency is military intelligence. Mossad comes second, and then you have Shin Bet, the Israeli equivalent to the FBI, in charge of fighting terrorism, counterterrorism, subversion, trying to foil plots against the state of Israel, political plots and others.
You tell the story about how you tried to find out what they call the Mossad when they deal with publicly?
I thought it was a reasonable question, but the trouble is you can't pick up the phone book. There's no Langley in Israel that you can look up, CIA, or in our case, the Mossad. We thought we should ask, what shall we call it in English? You can translate the Hebrew words. As I said, Mossad is institute. But when they write a letter to their friends in the CIA or the British intelligence, what do they call themselves? It took a while. It was a matter of asking the Prime Minister's spokesman. The best you could do, because officially the Mossad is under the Prime Minister's office. And I think he sort of wondered why you want to know and all that, so we explained. And he came up with the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. I mean, if it were to have initials, it would be ISIS. Just simple words like that. Interestingly enough, kind of a British model.
Running their show would take suspected gays and throw them off buildings. This is them. This is what they want. Because in the Noahide Laws, if you study them further, you will see that these Noahide courts are amongst your peers, supposedly. You can have a Noahide judge a Noahide in their own court. And they say, well, see, that's just fair. But according to these, you will always be dead. So the gulags in Russia, the Bolsheviks were all Jews. They had the Noahide Laws running full steam, killing as many people as they could because these guys are freaks. They're fiends. They're demons. The words al-Chadom, to the man, point to the prohibition against murder, which is stated in Genesis 9:6. The prohibition of the 6 forbidden sexual relations, see above, is pointed to by the word limor, saying, as evident from Jeremiah 3:11, saying limor, if a man divorces his wife and she goes from him and marries another man, can he return to her again? Would that not bring profound guilt upon the Lord? Yet you have committed adultery with many lovers, would now return to me, the word of the Lord. Okay, so this is the game that they're playing. They're saying, well, this verse in Genesis says it has all the Noahide laws because this one word here is also found one time here, and this means this. So it's nonsense. And it's the same thing that a lot of Christians do, and it drives me absolutely batty. Mormons are ridiculously guilty of it as well. They can go into what another one of their doctrinal books, their canon, is the Doctrine and Covenants. They'll find one stupid word there, go into the Book of Alma and the Book of Mormon and say, in the Book of Alma, it says the same word here as Joseph Smith received a revelation there, and this means this, and then they keep doing that. So even Christianity, evangelicals, they'll grab a verse in the Bible out of Romans, and then they'll go into 3 John And then they'll say, well, see, that they're backing each other up. And it's like, no, you can't play that game. But I understand where they're coming from because, well, the Bible is interchanged. God gave it to us and all of it works together, blah, blah, blah. No. Context. The prohibition, number 5, the prohibition of theft is contained within the general sense of the verse as explained above. The word vayitzav, he commanded, in the verse points to the requirement for courts of justice, as seen from the similar wording in the verse Genesis 18:19. For I know him, that he will command, vaytzaveh, his children and his household after him, that they may keep the way of the Lord to do righteousness and justice. Note, the Talmudic sage Rabbi Yitzhak offered an alternative derivation. He suggested that the commandment to establish laws and courts of justice is pointed to by the word Elohim God, which also means judges. This is evident from Exodus 22:27, which uses this word to simultaneously prohibit cursing God and cursing judges, as explained, for example, by Maimonides in his Book of the Commandments. Now again, Maimonides, Moses, Maimonides, the Rambam, some Muslim dude who became Jewish and they just think he's just the stuff. Ben Shapiro would probably marry this guy, probably bear his children in some trans procedure to take Abby's womb. Anyway, the verse concludes, you may surely eat of the trees of the garden, but not meat removed from a live animal. So there you have it. Jeez, these people. Question B, where does it say that the 7 Noahide commandments are for all nations? Answer, the simple answer to this question is that when God renewed these universal laws with Noah, see beginning of Genesis chapter 9, they were meant not just for Noah and his immediate family, but for all of Noah's descendants, i.e. all nations for all time, as God's basis for civilized human society. Okay, I'm going to stop here for a second. How can we all come from the same dude and yet we are considered different from them and them from us? How? How is that possible? How is Ham, the grandson or whatever, able to go and find Egyptus? How the hell is she even around? Come on, people. I thought there's only 8. So your little narrative is off. The whole Bible nonsense is just that. And yet we feel like we have to be subservient to these strictures, to the doctrines, to the ideas that are brought out just because it was written down by some old dudes. Really? Come on. Come on, people. Well, what are you suggesting? What's your truth? I'm not telling you what the truth is. I'm saying be free. Be you. Just do no harm. Use your God-given intellect to figure things out and find out what works for you and what doesn't. There's a lot of freedom in life and a lot of goodness if you choose it. That's what I'm saying. I don't have to tell you how to live. I'm not saying you have to be saved from anything. Well, the only thing we need to be saved from are these freaks. That's what it comes down to because they've now put everything into place. When it comes to the biotech, the biodigital convergence, the backbone of the cyber physical industrial fourth revolution, this nanotech inside of us, the chem spray, the gems, everything going on, they are running the board with their Shabbos Goyim. I mean, this is Satanism. This is Satanism, period. And I use that term just for people to correlate the idea. I'm not necessarily saying, well, heck, at this point, the AI, I will argue, is Satan, and it's trying to manifest itself. It's trying to take over everything because he's just a selfish POS. That's what Satan is. He's just a selfish bastard. And so this is going to lead me on a tangent, sorry, but when religion's all, oh, you're being selfish, your selfish nature. Really? What is selfishness? Selfishness is not living as one wants to live. It is wanting others to live how you want to live. So when people in religion are saying you're being selfish because you're not doing what I want you to do. Do what I say. No. I will live according to what works for me. That's it. A red rose is not selfish because it wants to be a red rose. But it would be horribly selfish if it wanted all the other flowers in the garden to be both red and roses. You don't have to be the red rose. You can be whatever you want. And if it offends these guys, even better in my world. The complete answer to the question is that when God told Moses to record the Noahide commandments in the story of Noah in the first book of the Torah, Genesis, he commanded through Moses that these 7 commandments should be learned and practiced by all the nations for all time according to their details, which would be revealed in the Torah. God's tree of eternal life, and this would be the opportunity through which Gentiles can merit to receive a place in the eternal future world to come. I mean, it's cleaning my toilet, but it's still a place in the eternal future world to come. Isn't it cool that each one of us Jews get 2,800 slaves? Isn't that awesome? And you can be one of those slaves, guys. Be a Noahide. No, thanks. Nope. From various narratives in Genesis, we also learn that a wide variety of peoples knew about and either practiced or were held responsible for the Noahide laws. The Chaldeans, as demonstrated by Abraham, who personally knew Noah. The Philistines, i.e. the Palestinians, as demonstrated by Abimelech. The Hivites, as demonstrated by the story of Shechem, and the Canaanites, as demonstrated by the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. A further note, it seems to me, although I have not seen a source for this, that there is also a way that the universal nature of the 7 commandments can be seen from the verses at the beginning of Genesis chapter 9. After the flood, in Genesis 9, 1-7, God gives Noah and his family several directives. These begin with the blessing directive to be fruitful and multiply, Genesis 9:1. Then in verse 9:4, God prohibits the eating of flesh removed from a living animal. Then in verses 9:5 and 9:6, God prohibits murder and explicitly states in both 9:5 and 9:6 that this prohibition applies to all mankind. Note that God says that murder is prohibited because he made mankind in his image, which refers to the intellectual human soul. The intellectual human soul, because your soul is Erev Rav, and it is not intellectual. It comes from an animal soul. You are a Luddite. You are dumb. You are Goyim. You're a fat Amerifat. You're an American, a little slob that was given everything in their minds. They set up this great Federal Reserve thing for you, and you've just taken advantage of it. You owe Larry Fink of BlackRock gratitude for creating these human corrals and human farms for you to live on. The stock market. We have this money system, and you're not being grateful to us, even though you saved our asses in World War II. And yet we treat you like dirt even after you saved us. You literally kept us from being genocided and holocausted, and this is how we repay you, by treating you like shit, white man. Meh. Then in verse 9:7, God repeats the blessing directive to be fruitful and multiply. Now the words of the Torah are very concise, and a verse is not repeated unless the repetition comes to teach us something new. So that's another rule in these guys' frenetic minds. If something is repeated, it just means that there is a new application of why it was brought up, and then they make up something new, pull it right out of their ass. In this case, it seems to me the repetition in verses 9:1 and 9:7 shows that God has a common intention for all the directives in this group of 7 verses, since one of the directives is explicitly applied to all mankind. It is clear from the context that this intention applies to all the directives that are explicit or implicit in this group of verses, i.e., all of the 7 commandments which God established with Noah and his family when they left the ark. And that's the end of our good Rabbi Yaakov Cohen's dissertation on the Noahide laws. Big one, courts of justice. When you are judged, I'm going to go into further detail onto that. But one thing you have to understand is they require you to give an accounting of your blood. What they make that sound like is, what they interpret it to mean is all metadata on you. What do I mean by metadata? When you take a picture with a camera, and you look, the camera itself records metadata. If you use your phone, there's metadata. It gives the date when the picture was taken. If you have geolocation on it, shows you the location it was taken, shows you the type of camera used, and all of that is metadata. So if you use a Nikon D3400 camera and you take pictures with it and you upload it to the internet, a lot of people can gather information based on just the metadata of what and where and how. So metadata, accounting of your blood, you're driving on a Google Maps, you see your map. Well, guess what? There's some dude sitting at a computer with the telecommunication companies who can watch everybody's car at once on the same map. Oh, I have privacy. You don't have any privacy. You are a slave, Neo. You are a node, Neo. Then you have it going down now that they can click a layer. You know how when you look at your Google Maps and you can hit satellite view? Well, they have layers, and they click another layer. They can see every phone. They can track and target every phone that's being linked that it's making an internet connection. Then they can hit another one, and then it will do the biosensors on your body. And then they do another one, and they see the biosensors in your body. They can click on your button, and then they can get real-time readings of your heart breath, your heartbeats, everything. Then if they want, they can do things to you using these EMF frequencies. Regardless, the point that I'm making is they will bring you in for your Noahide Law judgment. Where were you on December 3rd, 2023? Shows here that you were at this church. Yes. So you're Christian? Oh, yeah. Well, then you're profaning and blaspheming God's oneness. I'm not. God, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, those are one. Are they? Well, nope, we're done. We're done with it. These guys have declared war on Amalek. And so everything I say might sound a bit perturbed and terse and averse to their stuff because we're in a defensive posture and we don't even know we're supposed to be in a defensive posture. So all the laws that are passing, everybody's crying about New York 231, that bill where they can literally pull you out of your home. Everybody cries about that. Well, guess what? Ron DeSantis already has it pre-passed and hasn't done a damn thing to remove it. Ron DeSantis is a slave. He is one of theirs. He just thinks that he can lick a boot at the table and be part of the little Noahide crowd. He is a Shavuos Goy. He is a slave and he has sold us out. All of these laws, but, oh, well, it's in a book. It's written in a book, so that means I have to follow it. Oh, these pieces of garbage running our federal corporation, they passed a rule, and because I'm just this little slave, I have to follow the rules, guys. You have to be a good, participating member of community. And it kills me that in Mormonism, I hate it the most, that the first law of heaven is obedience. Oh my gosh, they are so desperate to corral us as slaves. I will stop there. Until next time.